Star Trek reveals bittersweet ending for Kelvin Timeline's Captain Kirk. In a surprise revelation that has sent shockwaves through the Star Trek fandom, the franchise has finally given closure to one of its most controversial and dynamic versions of an iconic character, Captain James T. Kirk of the Kelvin Timeline. Introduced in J.J. Abrams' 2009 Star Trek reboot, Chris Pine's portrayal of Kirk was a bold reinterpretation of William Shatner's legendary role, blending swagger, charm, and vulnerability. Now, more than a decade after Star Trek Beyond 2016, the Kelvin Kirk's journey has found its end, not with a bang, but with a contemplative, poignant farewell that underscores the complexity of heroism, legacy, and choice. This bittersweet ending doesn't come in the form of a theatrical movie or a bombastic space battle. Instead, it arrives via a newly published short story included in the anthology Star Trek, Echoes of the Multiverse, which explores alternate timelines and their consequences. The story, titled Final Course, offers a reflective and emotional coda to the Kelvin Kirk's arc, a tale that speaks more about sacrifice and personal growth than it does about phasers and warp speed. The Post-Beyond Kirk, a captain in crisis. When Star Trek Beyond left off, Kirk had just turned down a promotion to Vice Admiral and recommitted himself to the captain's chair of the USS Enterprise A. The movie ended on a note of hope, promising new adventures for Kirk and his crew. But in Final Course, we learn that the following years were far from easy. The story begins with an older Kirk, now a seasoned and more world-weary version of the man we once knew, quietly commanding a science vessel rather than a flagship. The decision to step away from the Enterprise was his own. According to the narrative, after years of near-death experiences and brushes with galactic catastrophe, Kirk began to feel the weight of his own mortality, something he had never considered in his youthful defiance of fate. The loss of his father, George Kirk, in the opening minutes of the 2009 film, had always been a ghost in his life. But now, decades later, Kirk grapples with the realization that he never truly confronted that trauma. His reckless courage was, in many ways, a mask for a boy who never got to say goodbye to his dad. This emotional revelation forms the heart of Final Course. In an intimate log entry addressed to no one in particular, Kirk confesses that he spent so much of his life trying to outrun his father's shadow that he forgot to live in the present. He recounts missions, friendships, and regrets, especially the camaraderie with Spock and Bones that he slowly let slip away due to pride and stubbornness. He questions the very nature of command, of Starfleet's ideals, and of what it means to leave a legacy. A mission without glory. The central plot of the story involves Kirk accepting a final mission to oversee a delicate first contact situation with a pre-warp civilization located near a volatile spatial anomaly. It's a peaceful task devoid of the flash and fire of typical Star Trek conflicts. But it's also symbolic. This is a Kirk who no longer craves glory or accolades. He simply wants to do right. During the mission, Kirk's ship is caught in the gravitational pull of the anomaly after an unexpected solar flare destabilizes its orbit. With the vessel's engines compromised and the crew's lives at stake, Kirk is presented with an impossible choice: risk everyone's lives trying to escape, or manually deploy a stabilizing beacon from outside the ship to neutralize the anomaly's effect long enough for evacuation. He chooses the latter. Unlike the noble sacrifice of Prime Kirk in Generations, this version does not die in a blaze of glory. Instead, he records one last log entry, not unlike a letter to his younger self. "You always wanted to be like Dad," he says. "You thought dying to save others was the greatest thing a man could do. But I've learned that living every day with honor, humility, and grace takes far more courage." The beacon works. The crew survives. Kirk is lost. Echoes of legacy. What makes Final Course such a powerful narrative is how it reframes Kirk's journey, not as a brash adventurer defying fate, but as a man who eventually comes to terms with it. His final moments aren't about outsmarting death or rewriting destiny, but accepting it with peace. He doesn't try to be a hero. He just is one. In the epilogue, we learn that the Federation names the anomaly Kirk's Veil in his memory. Spock, now an ambassador much like his Prime counterpart, visits the site years later and reflects on his friend. In a beautiful callback to the Wrath of Khan, Spock whispers, "Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human." Bones, retired and crankier than ever, reportedly raises a glass of Saurian brandy every year on the anniversary of Kirk's sacrifice. The Kelvin timeline may have started as a fast-paced, lens-flared action reboot, but Final Course brings it full circle, anchoring it in the kind of emotional storytelling that defined the best of classic Trek. It's not about timelines or explosions. It's about people, choices, loss, growth. The multiverse mirror. The timing of this story also serves a larger thematic purpose. With Star Trek, Legacy, Strange New Worlds, and the multiversal arcs in Lower Decks and Prodigy, Trek has been embracing its full narrative spectrum. Final Course reminds us that every universe, every version of a character, has value, even if it's not part of the prime timeline. There's a moment in the story when Kirk sees a multiversal echo, a brief glimpse through the anomaly of his prime counterpart's death on Viridian 3. He doesn't see the whole event, only a flash of the other Kirk's face as he sacrifices himself to stop Saran. Kirk doesn't understand what it means, but he feels a strange sense of kinship. "I think I've done this before," he says. Somewhere. This subtle nod is more than just fan service. It's a quiet confirmation that heroism, in all its forms, transcends timelines. Whether it's Shatner's Kirk, Pine's Kirk, or another yet to be imagined, the essence of James T. Kirk is universal, bold, fallible, loyal, and ultimately selfless. Fans react with mixed emotions. As expected, fan reaction to Final Course has been emotional and divisive. Many readers praise the story for giving closure to a character who had been left in limbo for years. "I didn't know I needed this," one fan posted on Reddit. "It's the perfect ending. Not flashy, just honest." Others expressed frustration that this resolution didn't come in the form of a full fill. After years of on and off production rumors about Star Trek IV, many still hope to see Chris Pine reprise his role on screen. But even skeptics admit the story does justice to Kirk's evolution. It's not the ending people expected, but it's one that feels earned. Chris Pine's silent nod. Interestingly, Chris Pine has remained quiet on the story's release, though insiders suggest he was consulted before publication. A close source said Pine was deeply moved by the script and gave his blessing to the character's conclusion. Given Pine's own ambivalence about returning to the franchise without a strong script, Final Course might be the kind of epilogue he can proudly stand behind. What it means for the future of Trek. The closing of Kelvin Kirk's chapter doesn't necessarily mean the end of the timeline itself. In fact, the anthology teases a potential spin-off focused on a grown-up Jayla from Star Trek Beyond, now a captain herself, inspired by Kirk's final actions. And with the ever-expanding scope of Trek's multiverse, nothing is ever truly closed.